Today, we're exploring two harrowing cave tales that took a dark turn. Both stories shine a light on the tragic struggles of cavers battling chronic illnesses. First up, Alejandro's story, a heart-stopping ordeal unlike anything we've seen before. Picture this: a cave adventure spiraling into a desperate battle to breathe, fighting for every gasp. Can you imagine being trapped like that? Then, don't skip the second story. Giorgi's illness delivers a lesson he'll never forget. These gripping experiences will have you safe on your cozy couch or tucked in bed, thinking, "Thank goodness that's not me." Which story sounds scarier to you? Deep beneath the limestone cliffs of Spain's Cantabria region, secret worlds hide in the shadows of the earth. Clara and Alejandro, two daring cavers, set their sights on a bold dream to explore every uncharted cave across the continent. For Clara, each adventure fueled her fearless spirit, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Her childhood friend Alejandro shared her drive, but he carried a heavy secret, a crippling fear of the dark. It gripped his chest, stole his breath, and in his worst moments left him faint. Yet their shared goal burned brighter than his fear. Guided by Isabel, a seasoned caver, they dove into intense training to conquer the underground. But caves don't bend to dreams. Cold, silent, and unforgiving, they lie in wait for even the tiniest slip. Isabel's lessons were relentless. In the damp, twisting tunnels of Altamira cave, she drilled them in rope techniques, navigation, and gear checks. Jagged limestone and tight passages tested their endurance. Clara glided through with confidence, her every step precise. Alejandro, though, faltered under the weight of the shadows. Each flicker of his headlamp sent his heart racing, the darkness feeling alive, closing in. While examining the stones they found, Isabel saw his struggle, but also his grit. "Fear's just a signal," she said softly. "Feel it, but don't let it control you." Alejandro nodded, clutching his harness like a lifeline against the abyss. After months of grueling prep, Isabel declared them ready for their first true test. Altamira Cave, a notorious Spanish labyrinth of slick tunnels and endless depths. Clara and Alejandro packed their gear with Care 3 headlamps each, extra batteries, ropes, carabiners, and emergency beacons. Alejandro, wrestling with his phobia, checked his lights obsessively, his hands shaking as he tucked away more batteries. "We'll crush this," Clara said, her voice steady with resolve. Alejandro forced a faint smile, but the thought of Altamira's black tunnels twisted his gut. What keeps you grounded when fear creeps in? Drop it in the comments below. Altamira's entrance loomed like a jagged scar, devouring the daylight. Isabel led the way, her headlamp slicing through the gloom. The air turned thick, cold, and damp, clinging to their skin. The first chamber opened wide, its glistening walls and stalactites standing like ancient guardians. Clara's voice echoed with wonder, her excitement bouncing off the stone. But for Alejandro, the darkness pressed harder, his breath shallow as he clung to the glow of his light. "Stay tight," Isabel warned, her tone calm but firm. "This place doesn't tolerate mistakes." The trio squeezed through tunnels barely wider than their shoulders. Clara moved with grace, her passion for discovery lighting her path like a dancer's flow. Her confidence lifted them all. Alejandro trailed behind, his mind split between the cave's demands and the panic clawing at him. Shadows danced in his peripheral vision, every flicker of light a new threat. Still, he pushed forward, determined to prove himself to Clara, to Isabel, and to the cave itself. 3 hours in, the passage shrank into a claustrophobic crawl space. Isabel went first, her movements sharp, calling out directions. Clara followed, breathing evenly despite the crushing walls. Alejandro, At the back, felt the stone squeeze his chest like a vice. His headlamp flickered just for a second, but it was enough. His breath hitched, his vision swam, and the darkness seemed to swallow him whole. "Keep moving, Alejandro," Clara's voice echoed, muffled by the rock. He inched forward, heart hammering, the scrape of his gear lost in the thunder of his pulse. They emerged into a broader chamber. A fleeting moment of relief, but Altamira wasn't finished. Ahead lay a glassy limestone ramp, treacherous and steep. Isabel rigged a rope, guiding them with steady hands. Clara descended smoothly, her steps sure. Alejandro, still rattled from the crawl, gripped his gear tightly, his headlamp's beam jittering. "Eyes on the rope," Isabel said, her voice an anchor. But Alejandro's focus drifted, lost in the shifting shadows beyond his light. Halfway down the ramp, Alejandro's boots skidded on the slick stone. He flailed, grabbing his gear instead of the rope. In a heartbeat, he slid and plummeted into a narrow crevice below. His body twisted, jamming upside down, legs pinned against unyielding rock. Pain seared his ribs, his faint headlamp casting feeble rays into the void. Panic crashed over him, his mind spiraling as his breaths turned to gasps. The cave's silence was deafening, crushing. He tried to cry out, but only a raspy whisper escaped. The darkness wasn't just around him, it was inside, tearing at his sanity. Clara and Isabel heard the thud and whipped around, their beams locking onto the crevice. "Alejandro!" Clara screamed, her voice breaking with terror. Isabel's expression tightened, sizing up the trap. The crevice was mercilessly tight, barely room for a rescuer. Alejandro's gear, now a twisted snare, pinned him further. His light flickered again, his breathing ragged, teetering on the brink. Time was slipping away. Who could face such depths? Isabel took command, her voice slicing through the panic. Clara rigged the rope. "We're pulling him out." They moved fast, feeding a second rope into the crevice below. Clara's hands trembled as she worked, haunted by visions of Alejandro trapped in the dark. Guilt gnawed at her heart. Isabel eased into the crevice, her body bending to navigate the jagged stone. Rock scraped her skin raw, but she pushed on, her light finding Alejandro's ashen face. His eyes were wide and wild, his breaths frantic. "Hang on, Alejandro," she said, her voice a beacon. But his fear was dragging him under, luring the cave into a nightmare of endless night. For 6 brutal hours, Clara and Isabel fought the cave's grip. Isabel wrestled to strap a harness onto Alejandro, but the cramped space and his twisted position turned every move into a gamble. The slick rock and freezing air sapped their strength. Clara called out encouragement, her voice raw, while Isabel worked with laser focus. Alejandro's awareness faded, his body shaking from shock and cold. The cave seemed to tighten its hold, its stillness taunting them. Every second felt like forever, the stone threatening to bury their hope. Last, with one final desperate pull, Clara and Isabel freed Alejandro from the crevice. His body was limp, his skin clammy, but his pulse flickered alive. They hauled him to the chamber above, Isabel checking his vitals with steady hands despite her exhaustion. Clara clutched his hand, tears cutting tracks through the grime on her face. "You're safe," she whispered, her voice shaking. Alejandro's eyes flickered open, the darkness retreating just enough to reveal Clara's face. The cave had let him go, but its mark remained. The 3 staggered out of Altamira, battered and drained. Alejandro's body was bruised, his mind bore deeper scars. Sunlight hit them like a miracle, but his journey wasn't over. For months, he sought therapy, wrestling shadows that lingered in his dreams. Clara stayed close, her spirit unbroken, but shadowed by guilt for pushing him into the depths. Isabel, their steady guide, offered hard-earned wisdom. Caves don't care about your fears or dreams. They just are. Respect them, and you might make it out. Altamira Cave delivered a merciless truth to Clara and Alejandro. No amount of gear can outweigh experience, and no dream justifies ignoring your limits. Their tale is a powerful reminder of resilience, the unbreakable bond of friendship, and nature's unyielding force. The cave waits for no one. Are you ready to step into its shadows? Krubera Cave, one of the deepest and most treacherous caves on Earth, nestled in the wilds of Georgia. In January 1998, 4 fearless explorers set out to unlock the secrets of this mysterious underground world. What started as a thrilling adventure spiraled into a heartbreaking tragedy. As you sit cozy on your couch or tucked into bed, would you dare venture into these dark, suffocating tunnels? Let's find out what happened. On a freezing January morning in 1998, 4 figures stood at the entrance of Krubera Cave in Georgia's rugged Abkhazia region. This wasn't just any team, they were seasoned adventurers. There was 36-year-old Giorgi, brimming with enthusiasm, 42-year-old Nino, a navigation whiz, 38-year-old Zurab, the gear expert, and 45-year-old Irakli, the steady-handed leader. Krubera was a legend, a sprawling underground maze plunging over 2 kilometers deep, with tight passages, slick surfaces, and an eerie darkness that only the bravest could face. Giorgi had shared that he had diabetes, a risky condition for such an extreme expedition, but like his teammates, he was drawn to the thrill of discovery. "His cave's gonna give us a story we'll never forget," he said with a grin, as their flashlights cut through the gloom of the entrance. They checked their ropes, helmets, and backup batteries. Everything looked ready. But here's a question. Can any adventure into the wild be truly safe? Nature has a way of testing even the best prepared explorers. The team descended into Krubera's depths, its entrance like the gaping jaws of some ancient beast. For the first few hours, everything went smoothly. The air turned icy, and the faint drip of water echoed off limestone walls. Nino, ever meticulous, had studied the maps, marking every twist and turn. Zurab secured their ropes with precision, while Giorgi's infectious energy kept spirits high. "It's like we're on another planet," he said, his headlamp casting light on shimmering crystal walls. The team moved carefully, squeezing through narrow passages in single file. Krubera's depths, though, were like a silent hunter, waiting. At around 700 meters down, they reached a rare open chamber, surrounded by tight tunnels. Irakli suggested a quick break. Giorgi grabbed an energy bar and checked his blood sugar. His diabetes was a concern in this brutal environment, but he flashed a confident smile. "I'm good, don't worry," he said. Still, the cave's damp chill was creeping into his bones. The group pressed on until they hit an unmapped tunnel, its walls slick and unsettling. Giorgi took the lead, his flashlight barely piercing the darkness. The passage grew tighter, forcing them to twist and contort. "Watch your step, this one's narrow," Giorgi warned. At one point, the tunnel shrank to just 23 centimeters wide. Imagine that, barely wider than a ruler. Movement was grueling. Then, disaster struck. Giorgi's boots slipped on the slick limestone, and he wedged himself into a crevice, completely stuck. Giorgi's breaths came fast and frantic. "I'm stuck," he shouted, his voice swallowed by the cave's echoes. Panic surged through the team. Nino tried to reach him, but the crevice was too tight to even get close. Zurab tugged at the ropes, but Giorgi's position made rescue nearly impossible. The jagged stone held him like a vice, pinning his arms and crushing his chest. Every breath was a battle. "Please, get me out," he begged, his voice shaking with fear. Irakli stepped up, his face tense. "We've got to move fast," he said. The worry cracked his calm. For hours, The team fought to free Giorgi. They pulled on ropes, but the crevice wouldn't budge. The freezing stone walls scratched and bruised them with every try. Their hands grew numb in the icy air, and their flashlights flickered as batteries faded. Giorgi's diabetes made things worse. Being stuck for so long threw his blood sugar into chaos, draining his strength. His body trembled. "I can't breathe," he whispered, fear glinting in his eyes. Irakli made a tough call to climb back to the surface for help. Hours later, a professional rescue team arrived, but Krubera's tight passages turned the mission into a nightmare. Special tools were needed, and time was running out. Giorgi's condition worsened fast, his body battered by the cave's harsh conditions and his illness. The rescue dragged on for 30 grueling hours. At first, Giorgi held on to hope, his eyes scanning the dim glow of headlamps for a way out. But as time crawled by, the cave's crushing darkness wore him down. His diabetes fogged his mind, and hypothermia gripped his body. Hope turned to despair and defiance. "You can't save me, just give up," he yelled, his voice bouncing off the walls in a haunting echo. He was losing the fight. The rescue team tried everything, drilling the rock, securing ropes, but each failure sank Giorgi deeper into hopelessness. Nino gripped his hand, her voice soft but trembling. "Hold on, Giorgi, we're getting you out," she said, tears welling up. Zurab leaned against the cold walls, helping the rescuers but weighed down by dread. The cave seemed alive, its shadows refusing to let go. The rescue leader, wiping sweat from his face, admitted, "This is the hardest job I've ever faced." Giving up wasn't an option, not yet. What would you do in Giorgi's place? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I need your help. Do you prefer watching videos with subtitles or without? Please let me know in the comments. After 30 agonizing hours, the team finally broke through the rock, trapping Giorgi. But it was a hollow victory. His diabetes, the freezing cold, and the crushing stress had pushed him past his limits. As they freed him, Giorgi slipped into unconsciousness, his breathing faint. The team raced to carry him to the surface, but it was too late. Before medical help could reach him, Giorgi was gone. Krubera Cave had claimed another life, its darkness unrelenting. The team was shattered. Irakli, voice heavy with regret, said, "If we'd prepared better, we might have saved him." Nino clutched the map tightly, whispering, "This cave showed us who's in charge." Zurab packed their gear in silence, lost in grief, staring into the abyss. Krubera had taught them a brutal lesson about nature's unforgiving power. Krubera Cave's shadowy tunnels will forever hold Giorgi's story, a haunting reminder of nature's beauty and cruelty. This tragedy drives home the need for preparation, skill, and respect for the wild. What do you think? Could this have ended differently?